Today's New Year's Day, and it's a nice cool 43 degrees, I think is what it was when I left the house. And just going for a ride, gonna head into town. Today, I just want to do a kind of a comeback shout out or whatever to the Blue Bike in Doyle. I like that guy. But anyway, I don't know if y'all know this, but he has 4 sons. How do I know that? Because on his last mail call, number 43, he said that he had 4 males. And I just wanted to say, hey Doyle, that's pretty cool. My wife and I, we only had 3 males. No daughters, you know, just 3 boys, 3 sons, you know, 3 males. And that's 3 males, not she-males or he-males or any of that other stuff that is going on today. But anyway, you know, I'm just picking on you, I hope, because I told you in a comment that you remind me so much of a friend of mine back in East Tennessee. His name was Leroy Henley, and everybody called him Bubba. And Bubba, he was from, you know, his whole family, the Henleys, you know, all of them, they were from way up in the mountains and stuff, and had a heart of gold. He was a really good guy, but man, that old boy had an accent. And we were taking a college English course together, and he had a pretty good sense of humor, and he'd always tease me because I was doing my best to not have an accent. So sometimes if I'm not paying attention, you'll hear a bit of an accent come through, but other times you won't. But I try not to have an accent. So he used to tease me and say that I didn't even sound like I was a southern boy. And I used to tease him, telling me he sounded like a hillbilly. But he was a good friend. We just joked with each other. And but anyway, we were in this English class together, and we had to write like a little paragraph about something and get up in front of the class and say it out loud and read what we had written, and then give the paper to the professor. And she was from like New York City or something like that, Boston, one of them. That's all those cities and towns on the East Coast are all the same to us. But anyway, she was from somewhere out there. And my friend Bubba gets up there and he starts talking about how they were trying to work on something, and they did something wrong, and it ruined it. Like R-U-I-N-E-D, ruined, meaning wrecked it, harmed it, you know, the word ruined. But Bubba couldn't say ruined. He'd always say ruined. It ruined it. And the professor interrupted him and said, I'm sorry. She said Leroy. Nobody, you know, she didn't call him Bubba, but she said, Leroy, now, what is that word? What are you saying? He said, ruined it. You know, like it ain't working no more. We ruined it. And she said, I think the word you're looking for, Leroy, is ruined it. And he looked at her and said, ma'am, now I know you ain't from here. You're from somewhere in the East Coast. And if y'all don't like the way we talk down here, y'all can move your butt back to the East Coast. Because we got along fine, and we spoke English fine, and we all understood each other fine long before you came down here. Now, that's the way I say it. If you don't like it, that's too bad. But if you're going to start knocking people for not talking properly, and then he pointed at me, and he said, you tell David to start learning how to speak Southern properly. And I like, well, don't draw me into this fight, man. I don't want to get a bad grade from her. And she ended up not holding it against him because she realized, you know, that's just the way he talked and whatever. But by the end of the semester, she turned out to be okay, I guess. She was kind of tough, but it wasn't that bad. But he had trouble with words like that. And when I heard Doyle saying royalty, he was kind of struggling with it. It reminded me so much of my friend Bubba. Man, I miss the guy now. I live pretty far, so I don't get to see him unless I'm going out to the tail of the dragon, and then we kind of like meet up and ride and, you know, visit for a while. But he reminds me of him so much. He was saying, Doyle was saying royalty, and I could just hear, you know, Bubba in that classroom saying, "Learned it." And we learned it. But anyway, for those of you that don't understand what Doyle's doing with all them stickers, if y'all look, okay, this is what we do in the South. If we've got a shed or something that isn't that important to us and our wives and living and, you know, that kind of thing, we don't pay for wallpaper and paint and all that fancy stuff. We put up whatever we can. I mean, I've had friends back in the mountains of East Tennessee that put up old newspaper on their wall and tried to make it look all fancy and, you know, whatever. And sometimes that works. If you do it right, it looks pretty cool. But and then you go back and look at a, you know, piece of newspaper that's been there for 100 years or something, and it's kind of cool. But anyway, but that's what Doyle's doing with all them stickers. He doesn't want all your stickers because he thinks your channel's so cool. He wants all them stickers so he can put them up on his wall for wallpaper. Isn't that right, Doyle? But anyway, yeah, I had another friend too that I used to work with, this guy, and he had been there a little bit longer than me, so he knew where certain things were more than I did. And that was, I was up in Bristol. I don't know if you know about Bristol, but Bristol, where the BMS, the Bristol Motor Speedway for NASCAR, that's in Bristol, Tennessee. But I mean, you go across the street at one point in Bristol and you're in Virginia. It's kind of like, you know, depending on what side of the sign you live on is what you pay in taxes and whether you can hunt on Sunday or do anything, you know. But anyway, this guy's name was Farron. And the first time I met him, man, I tell you what, you know, I heard some people that had some pretty strong accents, but I couldn't hardly understand Farron. But after I got to know him, he's a good guy. But he was named after, I think he said that it was his uncle or great uncle. I think it was his great uncle, but his name was Farron Young. If you ever heard of that old country singer, it was pretty famous, you know, way back. That was his great uncle or something, and he was named after Farron Young. But anyway, Farron, he was one of these guys that, you know, he was trying to tell me where something was, and I went and looked, but I couldn't hardly understand what he was saying. So I went and I was looking around, you know, trying to find it, and the boss came up to me and said, "What are you doing, just dicking around?" And I'm like, "No." Oh, and dicking around, that's another thing Doyle says, dicking around. Now, I don't know if the rest of y'all say dicking around, or if that's just a southern thing. But for those of you that, I don't know if in California they say dicking around or what, but that's just like goofing around, killing time, having fun, just messing around, farting around, whatever y'all might say. But anyway, the boss asked me if I was dicking around, and I said, "No, sir, I'm trying to find something." Farron told me it was over here, and he said, "All right, well, don't spend too much time. If you know, if he knows where they are, go back and ask him." You know, and so I went back and asked him again, and I told him, I said I couldn't find him, and he said, "They 7 of them," and I said, "What?" And he said, "They 7 of them. They up there." And I'm like, I don't understand. Say that again. And he said, "There's 7 of them," because there's a lot of machines that are making a lot of noise and stuff. So he's like, "There's 7 of them up there." And he held up 7 fingers, and I said, "Oh, Farron, are you saying there's 7 of them?" And he said, "Yeah, ain't that what I said? They 7 of them." And it's like, man, here in the South, you know, people that watch a lot of TV and stuff, they'll hear an accent on TV, and they think that everybody in the South has an accent, and that's not true. I mean, when I lived down in southern Louisiana, this was before I got married and stuff, you know, many years ago. But the girl I went out with, her dad was, I don't know, he was a Yankee. He was from, or according to Bubba, he'd be a damn Yankee, because a Yankee comes down and visits and spends money. A damn Yankee comes down here and stays. So according to Bubba, he'd be a damn Yankee. But he was from somewhere like upstate New York or something like that. He was a decent guy. But her mama, she was dyed-in-the-wool Cajun, man. She'd be talking to you, and she'd be speaking English one minute and French the next, and mixing up words. And she'd say, instead of laundromat, she'd say washateria. And she'd say, one time I was going to run into town. I was over there, and I was going to run into town. And she said, "Oh, Shad, as long as you don't be in town, would you be sweet and pick me up a loaves of breads?" And I said, "Sure, Mama Heart. And how many loaves would you like?" And she said, "Oh, Shad, just one loaves." So to her, everything was plural, but her dad always used to say loaves is plural. You know, anytime she would try to pluralize stuff, her dad would say, "That's not how you say it." And she'd tell him, you know, "Well, that's how you talk. It ain't how I talk." But there's people in Louisiana even that they'll have really strong Cajun accents, and some of them will be speaking French and then English and, you know, whatever, a little mixture of both. And then there's others that'll, you know, won't speak French, but they'll have a pretty strong accent. And then there's others that, man, you'd never know they were born and raised in Louisiana. I mean, if you heard my youngest son talk, born and raised in Tennessee, my youngest son has really no accent at all. And he doesn't even really say y'all. I mean, once in a blue moon he does, but not much. And but my two older boys will do that, but he doesn't. And it's like, you know, not everybody in the South has an accent, so sometimes I try not to. But you know, when I hear people like Doyle talk, or my friend Bubba or Farron, you know, it's hard for me to not talk the way I normally would. Well, anyway, Moto Warriors, Happy New Year to y'all. And as always, live your life with the heart of a Viking warrior. Never give up. Whatever you're going for, whatever your goals are, whatever your dreams and desires are, go for them with everything you've got, because you're going to have one shot at this life, and you might as well make your dreams come true. So live your life with the heart of a Viking warrior. Thanks for watching, Moto Warriors. I'll see y'all later.